Good afternoon and welcome to You and Your Business with me, Alec, on 103.2 Dublin City FM. Each week I invite an expert from the world of business to share their knowledge, insights and tips to help you with your particular challenges. If there's a topic you would like covered, or if you feel you can make a contribution, please email your business at dublincityfm.ie and perhaps we'll be having a chat here one day soon. My guest today is the owner of Interactivemedia.ie. He's also a member of the Virtual Business Owners Network. He's an author of multiple online courses for corporates, colleges, and private businesses. And on top of that, he's also a presentation and interactive video designer. I'm delighted to welcome Cormac to the You and Your Business studio. Hiya, Cormac.
How are you doing? Thanks very much for having me, Alec. It's an absolute pleasure.
No, great. Well, I'm going to take you back to your last year in school, unfortunately. So I don't know whether you were that person who wanted to travel the world. Were you the academic? Were you the daughter? What was going through your mind the last year in school?
Yeah, well, look, I'm not even going to give it a year, which is my last year in school, but it was a few years ago, Alec. And yeah, I wasn't an academic, I'll have to admit. I was fairly good at some subjects. I mean, I loved history and art history and English.
Sure.
But I really wanted to just get out there and experience life. So that led me to, heading off I did a year in Australia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we went over to the States. We outstayed our 4-month J1 visa. Yeah, so we had to decide, it was myself and my buddy John, we had to decide where we were going to go next. And on the flick of a coin, it was heads for Canada and tails for the West Coast. We probably would have had to been illegal. So thank God it was heads, and we headed up to Canada.
Right. Let's just pick Australia for starters. I mean, what we're looking at is a completely different cultural experience. How did you find it?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. You've got the weather. I do a little bit of surfing quite badly, so I was able to do a lot of surfing there. There is a good spirit. I know there's a lot of Irish and English, and I spent a lot of time hanging out more so with English because I always wanted to get away from the Irish. But there's a great sense of freedom because
And did you manage to travel much of Australia, or were you sort of?
Yeah, I did mostly along the south coast, along the Nullarbor Plain, over to Perth, which is absolutely beautiful. We stayed in Sydney, Melbourne. Really loved Melbourne because it's a great music city, and as I told you before, I'm interested in music and I play music. I even brought my bass guitar over with me to Australia, so I was playing a little bit over there. So it's a wonderful experience, and I'd love to think that my own son will do it at some stage.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. The one thing that seems to be in common with everybody who goes to Australia is, I wish it just wasn't that far away.
Yeah.
Otherwise I'd live there.
Yeah, absolutely. If it was a little bit closer, I'd definitely spend more time there.
Yeah, no, a fantastic thing. And then, of course, you go to the States at J1. I'm gathering you're sort of living hand to mouth at this stage because, I mean, you're young enough playing music and hoping to hit the world of rock.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but the thing is, in the States, it's funny, you'll always pick up work there, and as an Irish person, we still have there's a good opinion of us still there as being hard workers. That's thanks to our forefathers, I suppose. But so it was very easy to get work over there, and I did all sorts of jobs. There was one time where I was over there vacuuming industrial silos. I was painting. I worked out in Montauk, in the Montauk Yacht Club. It's quite a famous yacht club, I found out when I was there that the guy who owned it he was connected with the mafia, So it was a good experience, and you'd have all sorts of characters in there, I can tell you, Alec.
Yeah, no, fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. In Montauk, I know my daughter worked in Montauk when she was over on a J1 visa as well. So it was a trip up to Canada. Again, another sort of cultural experience, something different.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was the toss of the coin. The 4 months were up. We were heading up to Canada. There was a whole gang of Limerick girls up there that we knew. One of them was an ex-girlfriend, just adding that little bit of spice to the mix.
Nice.
Yeah. They let us stay there, and they had a huge house, and they let us stay there. They were very good. I've always a lot of friends from Limerick. We had an absolutely fantastic time. But we were there on it was like a tourist visa, but you can get that for 6 months.
Sure.
So again, I was working in some bars and just doing any sort of work that could come along. My friend John was a painter. He was doing painting work. And again, we kind of, there was a little bit of an Irish community up there. We were in Toronto, and we just did whatever we could to get by and to have enough money to be able to go out. And like, the thing is, you'll have a little money, but you have a fantastic social life.
It does show you what you can do with little money.
Yeah, true. Better social life then than I do now, I have to say.
I'm sorry, that age and responsibility.
Oh, it's terrible. Two terrible things.
Yeah, two terrible things. I mean, I think you mentioned before that the weather wasn't that conducive in Canada.
Yeah, so it was one of the coldest winters on record up there, and it was we're there for 6 months, and about 5.5 of it, I think, was snow and absolutely freezing. So yeah, like, but by the time 6 months was up, I was actually looking forward to getting back to the milder climb of Ireland, and it's probably the only time
I must have been desperate.
Yeah, I'm telling you, yeah, it's the only time I've looked forward to getting home for the weather, Alec.
It's great. So I'm gathering sort of the rock stardom piece didn't work out the way you'd hoped.
Didn't quite work out, yeah. But I always had ambitions, and I always kind of kept a hand in there. And I always kind of played, and I had a band. I ended up down in Cork, and I had a band down there for a few years, and we were really just playing around Cork.
Sure.
We had bigger ambitions. We played a few gigs up in Dublin as well. The ambition was there, but we never quite made it, so.
Yeah, so, well, at least you had a go at it. And you'll have those happy memories of gigging and doing things. Were you mainly doing covers, or you playing some of your own music as well?
No, we used to write our own stuff,
very good.
Play it, and then we kind of mix it in with a few covers then as well. So like, that'll tell you like how ambitious we were. We probably thought our stuff was fantastic, the way it is, but maybe other people didn't, because we didn't have any hit singles or hit albums or anything close to that.
Isn't it interesting? I mean, there's a great lesson for a lot of bands out there, because they'll often play a lot of covers, and people love the covers, and you'll see them bopping, and then they play a couple of their own numbers, and because people don't know them, it causes a problem. You can see the audience are getting a bit jittery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they love it, but the audience don't, and you have to please the audience.
Well, you do, and there's a lesson you learn. I was just talking to somebody back from a Peter Gabriel concert, and her comment was, yeah, it would have been great, except he played too much of his new music.
Oh yeah. You hear that a lot with bands, don't you? When they've got the new album and they're promoting it, and people they just don't know the material. Yeah,
and so therefore, so even the top stars struggle with that element.
Yeah. True.
All right. So anyway, you've done that. You're coming back to Ireland, but you were off to Spain to do a bit of teaching as well. So
I got into the TEFL teaching, and I had been playing in a band, and I said I'd just take the year out. So I went over to a city in the Basque Country called Pamplona. But it's very, some people up there count it as being part of the Basque Country, and some don't, but for all intents and purposes, it's in the Basque Country, Alec. And that was a lovely experience. I was learning the culture, trying to learn the language. And I told you before, I do a little bit of surfing quite badly, but it was great because I used to be able to drive up to the north coast of Spain, up to there's a town called Zarau, and that's in the Basque Country in the north of Spain. And then another weekend, I think I crossed the border and go into France. So I go into the French side of the Basque, so the French Basque Country. And it's just, again, I suppose I always loved that sense of freedom. I went over on my own. I got the ferry from Rosslare, and I just drove the whole way down from the north of France the whole way down, and it was an adventure.
It's great fun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, in Pamplona, did you learn to run?
You would, all right, with the bulls, yeah. But look, you'd be probably in more danger from the other I shouldn't say Irish drunks, because there's drunks from everywhere. Irish, English, Australian. So they're more dangerous than the bulls, Alec.
Yeah,
There's a lesson in that.
it sounds like a cocktail for disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, anyway, if you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my studio guest today is Cormac Cullen. All right, less of the frivolity and onto the world of work. So, okay, after all of that fun, you were going to come back and your life was changing.
Yeah, so there was, I had a son. I was working. I was still teaching English.
Right.
My son Ethan James came along, and that does have a sobering effect on one, that you really have to get your stuff together, you know.
Sure.
And teaching English it's great fun. It's great fun abroad. It's not so much good fun when you're back doing it in Ireland. So I was working up in DCU. I was teaching English in DCU to mostly South American students who were lovely. But there's only so many times you can teach the second and third conditioning, Alec, before you start going a little bit crazy yourself, you know.
Right.
I was thinking there has to be an easier way to do this. So at that stage, I was bringing in a lot of kind of e-learning, making very small e-learning courses, just using PowerPoint. And I had a real flair for that, you know.
All right.
And that, I suppose, it was a natural progression, and I needed to do something. So I went back and I did a master's in e-learning design and development through MTU in Cork. And that was the best thing I ever did. And I absolutely loved it. And it was literally life-changing. Like, it really was.
Isn't it amazing? Like in school, I was one of those people as well who, you know, learning for me in school was just, maybe it's just the way it was taught. I'm not blaming teachers or anything, but just the way I needed to be taught, it didn't fit. And I would have gone back to education later. And it sounds like something similar for yourself.
Yeah, I really realized the importance of education. I mean, when I'd finished school, I went to UL, and I did a BA in law and politics. I think it was more so maybe to please my mom, like just to go to college and get a degree. But I had really no major interest in law and politics. You know, I was probably trying to more on the run from the law than anything else, trying to keep out of trouble. So yeah. At this stage, you know, this is the first time that I really wanted to do it. So when I did that master's, I put everything into the master's, because I knew that I was going to get something tangible out of that I would have a skill, because it was a very practical master's that will actually teach you how to design and develop e-learning courses. So I knew I'll just get this finished and I'm going to have this wonderful skill. And I finished it. I did well, loved it. And even before I'd finished it, I was getting some job offers, Alec.
Oh, wow.
Which was fantastic. And that was about 4 years ago. And look, it wasn't long after that before we had COVID, and that was an absolute game changer as far as online courses was concerned. So there was a bit of serendipity there as well.
Sure. Let's just talk about e-learning, because e-learning has been the sort of skill set needed of the modern era. Let's just talk about the basics. What is it for people, and what benefit does it bring to business?
Yeah. So e-learning would be any way in which that you can put learning online. So you will take traditional learning and you will make it so that it's electronic learning, so that someone can do it on their computer, they can do it on their mobile phone, their tablet or their laptop or whatever it is. And you're making it accessible, but you also have to make sure, and this is where the design and development of it comes in, that it's understandable for people, that they're going to be able to interact and engage with it the very same way as if you're telling a story. People have to engage, or they're going to be turned off with learning. And that's getting back to, you were talking about how you weren't so clued into learning in school, and a lot of the times we weren't engaged properly, Alec. So that's an element I try to bring in, is I'm always looking to engage people, and that's the whole thread that runs through interactive media. Is we're telling a story through interactive media. We're engaging, we're getting people interacted with the material.
Yeah, I mean, I think I confess to being one of these people who I need it spelt out to me so simply. You know, I get lost very quickly in instructions and things to do.
Yeah, totally. And that's why I believe I'm quite good at it, because I need really simple instructions. And when I'm reading instructions, it takes me a while to get my head around it, and I don't always totally understand it. So I look upon it as if I'm trying to teach a 5 or 6 year old,
Hmm,
an instruction. I'll make it really, really simple first. So I'll pare it right back, and then I'll start to build it up with some other features, whatever features that are needed, and then to make it look good. But you're really starting out simple, and then you're building upon that.
Let's just talk about the process and the applications. I suppose let's talk about the applications of e-learning. I'm sure it's across all business fields, but maybe you might have an example or two of maybe projects you've worked on, which would give our audience a good example of where the productivity can be gained from using such a source.
Yeah, so I did a very large piece for Glanbia. Glanbia they've rebranded, and they're called Tier Lawn now, but we still know them as Glanbia. So they have a huge milk production process. And in this process, and this to anyone would seem really, really boring, but they could have, miles and miles and miles of piping. And this
Sure.
piping has to be cleaned, Alec. And this is
Yeah.
just one example. And people have, they have to be taught how the importance of this cleaning process, and how it works. So Glanbia came to me and they asked me to put together this piece of e-learning for them. So this is a real, it's not something that I would have ever thought about. And that's the thing about e-learning, is that I learn a lot from it, because every project is absolutely different. And I never thought I'd be working with, the cleaning and process system with piping, and the kind of the dirt and the buildup that has to be cleaned off from piping. So that's just one example. And, that'll be taken by all of their staff, in multiple factories, so there's hundreds of staff there that will have to take this, and it has to be accessible to all of them, and it has to be able to be, played on any device, so device agnostic and at any time.
If you're just joining us now, you're listening to You and Your Business with me, Alec Drew, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is Cormac Cullen. And we were just talking about sort of e-learning. So if I was to take it right, and you were talking about Glanbia with this piping, so this is probably maybe a video or a series of videos that have been put together for the employees, so that from a productivity base in the past, they would have had to bring somebody in on a regular basis, whereas now this learning is available for people to go online and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've got that dead right. Yeah, yeah.
And in terms of, and I know you sort of do this as well, so you can actually see how much of a course somebody has done. So you can track that from a management point of view as well.
Yeah, so it sits on a learning management system, and this whole trackability is huge, Alec, because they want to know that their staff are actually engaging with the course, that they are learning, and that there's a certificate built in. So it's built on this SCORM system, whereby the piece of e-learning is read by the learning management system. And as I said, it's all about trackability. They'll have to be able to give nice reports and visual graphs of how many people have taken the course, what score they've got, who's actually passed it, or then more importantly, who hasn't passed it. And
Sure.
then, a notification will come up. It'll go out to that person that they have to retake the course. A notification will go to the learning and development manager, because they need to know who's taken it. And, this kind of, it's important to have all of this automated as well. So, and that leads into having a very good learning management system,
Right.
where all these, progress reports can be issued from.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, you're able to get the reports, which is fantastic, and the use of technology. You've talked about a large organization like Glanbia. Does it have practical applications for much smaller organizations?
Yeah, it does. I'm actually working with a dietitian at the moment, and she would have, she would have some courses that she wants put online, and that will be just a single person.
Sure.
I've worked with people who are in the sales business, again, sole traders, and they want to have their course put online because they want to have this passive income. So a well put together course, that kind of serves a niche market. And I think the importance is to have, there's a trend, Alec, towards micro learning courses,
Right.
short courses that people can take, because suppose it's a bit like books as well. That people, people are finding it harder to get engaged with reading a full novel. But when we have this bite-sized learning, people are more, there's more of a chance that they're going to take this bite-sized learning and they're going to get something from it. And they're going to stay engaged for that shorter period of time. So yeah, for those smaller businesses, I've done quite a few e-learning courses for them, and also consulted with them to make sure that they're putting it on the right platform, be it on their own website or an external LMS. That's
Right.
very important as well. So I give a full service from the very start, explaining everything about the process, to giving them all the options, then helping them with the options and building the course for them.
So I suppose if we were to sum this up, it could be used, for example, onboarding new employees.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah. And I mean, I've done onboarding courses as well, because let's face it, like every company has an onboarding system.
Sure.
And e-learning is probably the fastest way of doing this. So a lot of times they'll have what are called learning paths, Alex, that
Sure.
they have to have a variety of courses within this. So for example, if you're the technical engineer, you'll have to do some of the technical courses. Then you just have to do the general onboarding courses. There could be some cybersecurity courses.
Yeah.
And you'll have to have all of these courses within the learning path ticked off. And again, going back to what we said about reporting, the reports will be issued out then to learning and development managers, that they know everyone has done these courses.
Yeah, so really what we're talking about is making education accessible to people, and they can take it in bite-sized pieces. And also it's removing the repetitious sort of training of people, because it's there. Once somebody's invested in putting together one of these courses, it's now there.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah. And the great thing about it as well is that, people can take it on their mobile phones and they can take it on their own time. So they can fit it in around, around their work. And I think with the movement towards a better work-life balance, that's been very, very beneficial as well. Like,
Yeah, and I suppose there's quite a lot of people might even be accessing these courses while they're even off work, because it kind of makes sense and they're killing some time looking at something for 15, 20 minutes or whatever it is.
yeah, that is true. And we can tell that as well, because I've seen some of the reports back, and I can see that people have finished the course at 9 and 10 o'clock at night, because
Yeah.
it will actually give you the time that they finished it, which is, and there's probably there's good data there for studies that can be done around learning, because some people seem to learn better. Maybe they're more relaxed, and they can take things in late at night. Personally, I can't do much after 9 o'clock.
Okay. So again, if we look at the process of putting one of these courses together, would I be correct in suggesting that you'll meet up with a client, try and understand what the outcome is, and then map out the process to take them there?
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. And then, obviously it's very important to set expectations. I have to know what they want, the outcome of it. And usually they all they know is they want to put a course online, and they don't,
Sure.
and they want some passive income, but they don't really know much outside that. Like, I don't think anyone I've come to has ever known what price they're going to charge with their course. Everybody gets stumped, they get stumped on that, Alec.
Yeah, sure.
And and that's something I help people with as well. It's important to get that right price point. Some people might even just want to get a course up as a piece of digital marketing.
Sure.
But people might sign up for this little micro learning course, and then they've got another subscriber. You're driving more traffic to the website, and that's absolutely fine too. So it's got multiple uses. It's not just a learning thing. It can also be used as a marketing tool.
Yeah, so I mean, it can provide an income, but it also works in terms of organizations using it for internal purposes to cut down on overheads.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's saved a huge amount of man hours, and there's lots of statistics there to show that the amount of man hours that it's saved, and how
Sure.
that's had a better return on investment. It's basically saved an awful lot of money for a lot of organizations.
Let's just look at another side of your business, and the presentation side. Now,
Mm.
as a professional speaker, I'm on stage quite regularly, and I don't use PowerPoint. Now, that's nothing to do with me hating PowerPoint. perhaps. And maybe it's because I'm just not that good at it.
Mhm.
However, I do see huge amounts of PowerPoint being used that is so bad. Maybe just talk to people about PowerPoint for a couple of minutes and maybe give them a couple of hints about it.
Yeah, so PowerPoint is just it's another tool in which we can put our message across. So I know you're a fantastic speaker, Alec, and you can put your message across very well through your own method. But I suppose PowerPoint is just a tool that people use, and it just so happens that I'm very, very good at using PowerPoint and making people's presentations look really good. But what's more important than having a slick presentation that looks amazing and professional? It's all about the narrative. It's helping people to tell their story. And what I've been able to do, it's an add-on to that, is I'll help people to tell their story, but it's through the interactivity within a presentation. So I won't just give them a presentation, I'll help them to make that interactive. And that could be, click and reveals or just extra buttons that they can click on, but I'll make a really good interactive presentation that the emphasis is on telling a client's story.
Right.
And
And
not just that.
Engaged, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just telling their story, it's about the client telling the story about their client. So what was the pain point? How did they help overcome this? Or how did they solve a problem? So I'll get the client to tell their story about somebody that they helped, so
Sure.
then people are very easily able to visualize, oh, that's what they do. This is the problem that they solve. And
Yeah.
that's really important, and look, we have all seen these terrible presentations where there's too much text on the screen, isn't there? And it's kind of, there's bullet points everywhere and it doesn't really work. And I'll give you one example. I was at a presentation and there was a speaker there. He was a solicitor and he had a load of legal terms and it was bullet points all over the place.
Yeah.
There was one story he told in it, and it was about how he'd helped an elderly lady after the house had burnt down. She'd lost the deeds to the house and she was in a terrible state, but he helped her to get those deeds back. They went through some organization in the UK. He went the extra mile, eventually got the deeds back. This lady was delighted. I think her husband had passed away. And that story always stood with me. The presentation was terrible, but the story was brilliant. So I actually reached out to him later on for a piece of business. So it actually worked, Alec, with the story.
Certainly did. Well, I suppose we're come to the end. We've about 20 seconds left, believe it or not. I told you I'd give you a 3-minute warning, in a 20 second. Tell people where they can find out more about you, Cormac.
Yeah, so it's Interactivemedia.ie. I'm Cormac Cullen. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can give me a call on 087 753 8835. Any way you want. Just Google me, Cormac Cullen. You should be able to find me, I hope.
Great. Well, thanks, Cormac, for coming into the You and Your Business studio. Thanks also to Stephen on sound. The podcast of today's show will be available on dublincityfm.ie from tomorrow. Thank you for your company. Please remember to join me, Alec Drew, again next week, 1 o'clock at the same time, for another edition of You and Your Business.
Lovely. Thanks, Alec.
Now, hang on a sec there. I'll just stop that.